All right, we're back. That was
Wow,
something.
is that the other new one?
That's the other one. So we got to figure out.
You having flashbacks to the '90s in the club? Holy hell, dude! I was like if you don't want to scream that we're two guys from Jersey, holy shit! All right, okay, whatever. Let's go. Oh my god! All right. Well, anyway, okay.
Production values. Production values.
Marketing. Look, you took that class.
Marketing. There you go. We have a great guest on today. We're excited to talk to Coach Jovon Johnson from Gannon University. Fantastic place, a unique place where, from a coaching standpoint, I think are they the Division II level, right? I think they're Division II. Well, Coach was 11 years played in the CFL as one of the literally one of the most outstanding players on the CFL in his era. He was at Winnipeg. He was at Saskatchewan. He did a fantastic job there as a DB. He coaches DBs now. He was with the Pittsburgh Steelers briefly as a player. He's a special teams coordinator at Gannon. Coaching the high school level was a fantastic head coach up in the Pennsylvania area. Took his team to playoffs multiple times. Was a fantastic coach. Eventually, then moved on and is coaching now at Gannon and special teams coordinator. Really a guy that's a fast riser to coaching space. One of our favorite kind of guys to talk to. Coaches that are really in a fast rising position in coaching wise. And without further ado, let's bring on Coach Jovon Johnson. Coach, what's going on?
Not too much. How you guys doing?
We get the bio pretty good?
Yeah, you were pretty good. You were pretty spot on.
Yeah. We try to do everybody, try and get everybody to do justice, Coach. We got to try to get everybody, we get them a little pumped up before they get going here so that they smooth sailing,
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic career as an athlete. Talk about your athletic career, because you really played for a very, very long time at the professional level. And you're laughing, you're like, is that good or bad? Right? No, that's good. That's good. And obviously now the last several years coaching. Talk kind of about your journey.
Yeah, growing up in Erie, Pennsylvania, single parent household. My mom worked 2 jobs to make ends meet for me and my younger brother. As I was growing up as a kid, a lot of the kids from the neighborhood would spend a lot of time at my house. My mom adopted 3 of my cousins who were taken away for foster care. So we kind of had a large household and a small home, but she made it work. So she's kind of the why behind I do anything that I do. And then, growing up, I was more into basketball than football. And as I started to kind of work through, the basketball realm of adversity of my size and those type of issues, I found my way kind of to football. And, when I started playing football in the 8th grade, my first day out on the job, the head coach tossed me a football and told me I was going to play quarterback. So he said he had been eyeing me on the basketball court. He knew that I was a point guard. So he was just like, think of playing the quarterback position as being a point guard on the basketball court. So I kind of took that and ran with it. And I had really good players around me, so they made the game enjoyable when I first started. So I just stuck with it. Once I got into high school, that's when I really started to take notice of my talent and the ability to go out there and do some things that a lot of people couldn't do. And, in my first 2 years, we struggled mightily at the school that I was at. We had all the athletes in the world, but the structure just was lacking. And we had good coaches, but, a lot of the players just didn't have a love for the game. So I ended up transferring to a prep school in the area and played with my best friends who actually got me into playing football, organized. And then, everything kind of skyrocketed from there. My best friend played the other corner, 6'1", 190 pounds in high school, ran a 10.3. I mean, you think about it, he had every Division I college coach in the building to recruit him. He was a 2-time state champion in track in 100 and 200. And then he verbally committed to go to Wisconsin. So I kind of got his scholarship opportunity to the University of Iowa. So which that kind of worked in my favor. A lot of people don't know that behind the scenes, but I was in the office just kind of trying to sell myself, but everybody would look at me and say that he's kind of small, those type of things. But the reality was, when you turn the film on, it didn't matter who film you put on, you always seen me.
Yeah.
And that was something that I always hung my hat on, is being relentless with my effort. And then I signed a scholarship the week before signing day to the University of Iowa, and just kind of went there with a chip on my shoulder because of how under recruited I was. And I told myself I would show people what I was able to do. And 4 years later, I had an outstanding career in college, second all time in interceptions at the University of Iowa, a 3-time All Big Ten. So I thought I did due diligence with my time there, but from there I ended up with the New York Jets out of college. I ended up getting released 3 times in about 2 months from that organization. So that was a journey in itself. And then I signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers under Bill Cowher. I was there for a year and a half before I made the trek up north to play in Canada. And that's kind of where I really made a name for myself. I came in Saskatchewan as a rookie in the CFL. I had, again, that chip on my shoulder. So, when you wear that chip on your shoulder, oftentimes you tend to rub people the wrong way sometimes,
Right.
that don't understand the journey or mission that you're on. So, I kind of rubbed some of the older guys the wrong way, just because I didn't have a desire to be friends. I wanted to take their job, and they were like, content with just being complacent, and that just wasn't who I was. So when they put me on scout team, I did everything I could in my power to make sure that they never.
Damn right. Hell yeah. Again. Hell yeah.
So it was one of those things where it was a gift and a curse, but at the end of the day, it worked out for me. We won the Grey Cup that first year in the CFL, which was quite the experience. But I wasn't a part of, what was going on. So, although we won, I was excited about that. But at the same time, like, I was never the type of guy that just be content with, going to a team, not making an impact and winning. Like, that's just not who I was. Ended up the next year in Winnipeg. And there I kind of took on that journey of, now I'm a new guy in a new world. Now I got to go back out and show and prove. And, I really had some guys around me, some veteran guys that really kind of embraced having me on the team and understood, where I was trying to take my career. And then things kind of took off from there. 2009, I was an all-star for the first time, being my 3rd year in the league. And then, once I made an all-star appearance, I just became an all-star after year. In 2011, won Defensive Player of the Year, was the first defensive back in the history of the league to do that, which is something I'm very, very proud of.
Absolutely. People don't even understand the amount of talent it takes to play DB in that league based on rules and things of that nature.
Nah,
like,
for real.
they have absolutely no clue.
Nah, for real. It's a different ball game. But after that, 2013, I ended up leaving from Winnipeg. They wanted to go in a different direction, go younger. Not that my play was lacking. It was just they wanted to go younger, which kind of understood, but just how they went about it kind of, again, just created an even bigger chip on my shoulder. So I ended up going to Ottawa. I was there for 2 years, an expansion team that just came back into the league. In my first year there, we went 4-14, 2-16. And, we had a really good team, but we just couldn't figure out how to win, with a lot of new guys coming together for the first time. And then the following year, we went to the Grey Cup in 14-4. So, we had a big turnaround, one of the greatest turnarounds in the history of sports. And then in 2016, I dealt with the same thing. I was an all-star in 2015, second in the league in interceptions. And then, again, team wanted to go younger. So I had to move on. I went to Montreal for a year. again, I'm surrounded by a lot of young guys. Gotta bring those guys along, but also play at a high level. So that's kind of where my coaching career kind of started. And within those 3 years of working with young guys and trying to get them where they needed to be, but also playing at a high level and preparing myself to be the best version of me. And then in 2017 and or 2016 in Montreal, I went out and had one of my best years, playing probably the most difficult position in the defensive secondary. Again, went through it again, and then ended up in Saskatchewan in 17 and 18. And those was just my last 2 years as a player. Just kind of got over the journeyman approach of playing the sport at a high level, because I felt like I could still do it. But, a lot of people just wanted me to come in to mentor the young guys, and that if I was going to be a mentor to young guys, I might as well start coaching. So I ended up in 2019, I actually retired from the CFL. And in that year at the coaching convention, one of my former teammates, Fred Reed, he actually told me that Matt Sackis was the head coach at a school in Ohio. And he went and took me to go see him. And when I ran into Coach, I was like, Coach, I'm looking for an opportunity to get in the world of coaching and, just show my worth as a coach now that I'm done playing. And he said, give me a couple of days. I might have an opportunity for you as a DB's coach at Defiance. And I'm like, okay. He called me about a week later and told me that he was going to offer me a job and he needed me to be there within a couple of days.
Yeah.
And so I packed up everything, put it in the car, and made the trek to Ohio in 2019. And that's kind of where my coaching career began. I was there for 3 years at Defiance. In the first year, halfway through the season, I was promoted from DB coach to defensive coordinator. We went from giving up 50 points a game to giving up 13 or less in the last 4. And then all of the players signed a petition so that he wouldn't hire anybody else because they wouldn't want to play for any other defensive coordinators. So he ended up giving me the title as DC. We went on and had the COVID year. We had a really good season that season. We played in the spring. And then when we came back in the fall, we just kept building on that. Coached 4 DBs in the secondary all conference from the same year. I had an All-American DN and an All-Region linebacker, a guy that actually played safety for me that I bumped down to the weak side linebacker position. And he's had a fabulous career since making that move. So I ended up moving back home because I got 2 young kids to take the head coaching job at Northeast High School at a place that hadn't won in a long time. And my first year there, we kind of struggled just, getting the guys to trust us and buy into what we were doing because it was very different from what they were used to and accustomed to. And then with those same guys in the following year, we made the playoffs, won the region, had multiple guys go all conference, broke I think it was 28 records that were for long-standing records at the school. So, and then I just knew that my time there was kind of exhausted, just because it's hard to coach in high school nowadays because you don't have the buy-in from the parents, and then when you're doing things out of the ordinary like 5:30 a.m. workouts and those type of things. Parents don't understand what it takes to get their kids to play at a high level. So, I kind of exhausted my time there and then ended up coming on at Gannon as the DB coach and special teams coordinator. And, I also have the pass game coordinator title, but, we had another, getting the guys to trust what we were doing type of deal. And then from there, once they started to trust that we knew what was going on, then they started to see improvement and started to play a lot better. But we played a tough schedule for the first.
Yeah,
5.
you did. Whew.
So that kind of leads me to where I am now. You got yourself muted.
I said that's a heck of a journey so far. It really is. a very, very diverse journey as far as like the places you've been and the type of experiences, which are really cool. I think always plays in to someone becoming a very good coach, because you get to see a lot of different things that are going on in a lot of different places, not just as a player, as a coach, high school, college, and kind of all those things now. Like, in the old days, like everything was top down, you know what I mean, for the most part. But now coaching is top down, bottom up, like everything. You're grabbing things from everywhere, you know what I mean, and multiple different areas, stuff from when you were a player. So it's really, really cool to hear the kind of different journey. What was I think what was the hardest part about transitioning from being a player to then, especially as long as you played at the professional level, to becoming a coach?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest transition was to be able to remove myself from thinking that those guys were able to do the things that I was able to do,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that everybody learns in a different way, and how do you be able to teach those guys and relate to their style of how they learn. So that was probably the most difficult part at first, but once I started to remove the emotions from it and focus more on the prospect and the kid, it became a lot easier for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Coach. I mean, literally, that is exactly verbatim the exact thing that I struggled with as a young coach. Having played at a higher level, now when you're that coach, especially that first year, that second year, where you almost feel like I could still be doing this. And then it's kind of, well, why can't that guy do this? That I could do it. That was easy. Why can't he do it? And you realize real quick, a lot of those guys can't do the things that you did. So to be able to separate that and now just take the overall knowledge of the game that you have and apply it to them, and the ability to teach it in a way that they can retain it and then now go out and execute verbatim exactly like what I have said to many people, that transition of why it's so difficult, especially those first 2 years, to kind of remove yourself from wearing a helmet to wearing a hat. Like that's always how I put it.
Yeah.
Like, we're going from a helmet to a headset now. And, it's all that work in practice of explaining things and breaking it down for them. And then your players, right? Like not everybody retains the information or can pick up on certain things the way you did. So to be able to kind of transition into your coaching mold, that's kind of how you start to, get your coaching personality and figure out what works for you as a coach, and then how to coach each one of those guys individually. Especially with your experiences, from being a Division I Big Ten player to then playing in Canada where, some of the rules are different, but still having a high level of success. And then just seeing how like even those guys coach the game, and then you go from there, basically you had almost 2-3 years as a pseudo player coach, right? Like a lot of these guys talk about like the end of their careers, how they take those young guys under their wings and they start to, kind of take that knowledge that they have about the game and then start to do it. I mean, listen, it's why some guys get signed in the NFL late in their careers, maybe with a team that they haven't been with. Hey, we need to bring in a backup quarterback who understands, who can work with this rookie guy that we just got in here, right? You see that a lot. How was that? Those last couple years of playing, how did you separate, hey, I can still go out here and get interceptions, but at the same time, let me help these guys out?
Yeah, I just I started to understand what my role was on the team as I started to get older. And a lot of the younger guys would always ask me, how was I able to do it for so long at such a high level? And
right.
they would gravitate towards, me as a player and want me to help them improve. And they would always ask me questions. And I think those guys, I think the world of all those young guys, because they were all super talented. but they would always ask questions, which as a young player, some people are intimidated to do because they don't want to look like they don't know what's going on.
That pride gets in the way, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm good enough. I don't need to ask him, or like, I don't want to ask him. He's so whatever. But obviously, like, you're a super approachable guy where they felt comfortable enough and in their own skin and with you, right? To be, hey, Jovon, how do I watch film? Like, or what do you see here? Or why are that? They can pick your brain, which, that stuff, like, for you to be able to not be, yo, buddy, go take care of that stuff on your own, right? Like, you embrace that.
Yeah, I truly embrace that. Especially my time in Ottawa. The funny part is when I was in Ottawa, I was surrounded by all first year DBs, and those guys, really kind of took to me and my coaching style as a player. We would sit down and film, and they would ask those questions like, what are you looking for when you're watching this? Because like I'm struggling with trying to find out, the tendencies and things. And I would break it down to them super simple where they would understand. And then we would have those moments of, let's stay after practice and get a little extra work in. Let's work some releases. Tell me what you're doing, how you're trying to play this type of technique. Because you're doing it at a high level, especially when your play is not falling off and they see you go out and you get recognized on the regular basis for accomplishments and things. They want that for themselves. So I was able to in Ottawa. 4 of the DBs that I played with, or 3 of them, were on the all-decade team for Ottawa, and they were all rookies when I was over there. So I like.
Yes, you did a good job, Coach. You did a pretty damn good job.
I kind of had a hand in and the accomplishments that they had, and then I went over to Montreal and kind of mentor young guys again, in kind of that same light of not being afraid to take the approach of let's stay after practice and work on the things that you need to get better at. Because obviously Canada is a different game. You get a lot of American players.
Yeah.
It's completely different. So you can't play press technique the way you play
especially
press
from the DB perspective, right? I mean, Dave, like, we've talked about it like a bunch of times when it comes to like, because we've had DB guys on and stuff like that. Like, if you can cover somebody in Canada, dude, or I don't even know if it's coverage, right? Like, how do I slow these guys down, running full speed at me from 15 yards deep by the time I pick them up? It's just a different game. And for you to transition, like, and then be able to explain it to a way to help these guys out, because I'm sure they were feeling like you were feeling the first year you were there, like, how do I do this? Like, it's a totally different technique than anything you're taught here in the States.
Yeah, it is. It's a completely different game. But football. But at the end of the day, I used to tell those guys, especially the first year guys, don't come in here with the mantra that you're better than all of these guys, because these guys are all, especially the American guys, are all NFL former players. They were in camps with NFL teams. A vast majority of those guys have that experience. So coming in there, be open with your mindset, because you're going to lose some reps. You got to be able to bounce back and come back and have a short memory, because that is a real thing in Canada, because you're going to lose. You're not going to always win the rep. And they just kind of understood what it took, because I used to beat myself up as a young guy. Like if I lose a rep or something, I would get pissed off, but that was just a competitor in me. Mm-hmm. But, I had to understand, like, it's different. Like the game's different. So you got to adjust to, what it takes to be successful up there versus down south. So, once I started to kind of gain some experience of how they would try to attack me at corner, and different ways to combat the motion and things like that, I became a lot better player. And then I just would teach those maneuvers to the young guys and just say, hey, like, this is how you play press here versus down in the US. That 1 yard makes a big difference. And that guy on the line of scrimmage can move laterally before the ball snaps. So you have to be prepared. We use the term proper preparation prevents piss poor for performance. So if you're prepared, how to answer. You have the answers to the test when the questions come up.
When you were at Iowa, Coach, you played for Kurt Friends, right?
Yes.
Yes. What were some of the, because that program has sustained for
Oh,
so many years, and obviously before him, obviously Hayden Fry was really successful. What were some of the things that you really learned taking away that experience playing at that program, and that created such a sustainability that can help you, has continued to help you as a coach going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the staff at Iowa was, they were always uh, the type of coaches who would remind you of what it took to be really good. But what it was all about was, we were relentless with our effort. We tackled very well, and we didn't give up explosive plays. So they kind of broke it down in a way that really resonated with the players. They always would never let you forget why you started playing. Like if you were an offensive guy, you started playing the game because you love scoring touchdowns. And if you're a defensive guy, you started playing because you love tackling people, right? So, being really good and paying attention to the details and being very excellent in your fundamentals is kind of why the program is where it is and has been for the last 25 plus years, is that they're really good at the fundamentals. They tackle really well. They play with relentless effort, and they don't give up explosive plays, and they keep the ball in front and force teams to have to drive the field and not make mistakes. If you can go out and play the perfect game, the score is still going to be 10-7.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, winning that.
No doubt. Yeah, and you and Iowa definitely won a lot of games like that too.
Yeah, 24-21,
really
right? 24-21, 21-14. Like it ain't nothing flashy, but we're still in, somewhere around the Big Ten championship every single year.
Yep, we're gonna muck it up. They're gonna be really good at the details, the fundamentals, and offense is gonna get some drives here and there. They're gonna run the ball. They're gonna keep the possession, keep the clock rolling, and just gonna make it a grind.
That's it.
Every possession. So if you get limited possessions in the game, they're gonna beat you because they're gonna get in field goal range. They're gonna kick field goals, and then if you make a mistake, they're gonna score a touchdown.
Right, and it's funny because it's counterintuitive to a lot of the high flying offenses now. But the counter to having a high flying offense is the defense keeps having to go back on the field. So for Iowa, the defense gets a little more rest because they eat up clock. Whereas a lot of the high flying offenses, you get a stop, you might be back on the field 3 or 4 plays later if they score one way or the other. So there's always that's what I love about football. There's always pros and cons to everything from that standpoint, So it's really, really interesting. All right, so talk about now you're special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
And
a minute 5's gone by and you're on.
What happened? I think Derek, there's something with your audio. What was I gonna say? You're at Gannon, defensive back coach and special teams coordinator. Talk about some of the things that since you've come in there that you've really been trying to instill in that program.
The weight room, the culture is built in the weight room in the off season. People talk about culture all the time, and how you implement the culture is the work that the guys are able to put in the weight room in the off season. That's when guys start to see other guys work, see other guys embrace that suck, and just go to bat and fight through those tough times over and over and over again, so that when you get into the season, you're battle tested. That when you need those gotta have it plays, guys are gonna step up to the plate. But I think you develop the culture in the off season, and then the players will start buying in, and from the top down, those guys start to bring along that culture and expectation amongst the young guys in the room. So the older guys are going to carry that forward, and then that's when you see that trickle down effect of this is what we expect. This is our standard. We're going to hold that line, and we're not going to fall below that. And I think that's kind of where it starts, is in the offseason in the weight program.
Has there been a learning curve from a player standpoint with some of the things that you've started to implement, defensive back wise, special team wise, from where they were before since you came in there?
Absolutely. 100%. Obviously, sometimes there's different ways and styles of coaching and how a coach teaches guys the technique and fundamentals of playing a position. So they had to, learn to trust the process and learn that, there's certain things that, I know as a player that were counterproductive to the way that they used to do things. So it was just a matter of, trusting the process, embracing the way that I teach it, and, understanding how to do it. And once they started to do that, they started to see success. And I think that's just the biggest thing is, do you trust the guy that's coaching you to do certain things? And when you buy into what they're teaching you, obviously they're coaching you for a reason. So you gotta start to embrace that and understand that they're in it for your best interest.
As far as like some of the things that you implement, like drills wise, and how do you kind of structure your development with the DB specifically?
Well, we have our everyday drills, so we do our EDDs every day pre-practice. So I like to get that meat and potatoes movement pattern done before we actually get into practice. So we'll start out about 10 minutes early before practice starts. We'll do just a warm-up EDDs of backpedaling, pedal weave, just a movement pattern that is specific towards backpedaling. And then, in our actual indie period during practice, we're going to look at what is our install for today, like what coverage are we putting in and how are we playing that coverage. So like whatever the technique is, we'll implement it in our indie period. So we're going to work, different techniques in our actual indie period based on our coverage install. So that's kind of how I formulate, our EDDs and our indie period. We're always going to have some sort of block destruction drill where we're working our hands, getting off blocks, not staying Velcroed. But we're also going to work, our technique of what we're installing for that day.
As far as the structure of your guys' practices, so take me through because you're doing special teams, you're doing DBs. That there's especially at the level you guys are at, that's a lot. You're covering a lot, right? Talk about like the structure of practices and how you have to kind of stay engaged the whole entire time, right? Because you're focused on your guys at certain times, and other times, obviously, you're focused on the whole entire team. Talk about that, because that's unique to special teams coordinators. You're not just coaching one side of the ball; you're coaching the whole team. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, so the way our practice structure is when we come out to the field, typically, we as DBs get out there early. So we'll do our pre-practice warm-up EDD drills. And then when the team is ready, we go into our flex period, which is your traditional stretch. And we'll do that. After we get out of stretch, we'll go to offense, defense of walk, depending on walk through our install. And then we'll go back to indie period. In that second indie period, that's when we'll work our fundamentals and techniques of whatever our install was for the day. And then from there, we'll go to one of the two special teams periods or three special teams periods that we have for the day. So once we leave from that indie period, let's say we have a Tuesday practice, we're going to go kickoff. So kickoff, depending on where we are in the season, we might be just introducing it where we're just working get-offs, coverage lanes, and that type of thing. Or like once we get into the part of the season, we're going to work our scheme. So we're going to go cover kicks and things like that. And then after that, we'll go to a team period. So team blitz or team run. And then we'll go field goal. And then we'll go back to team blitz and team pass. From there, we'll have our defensive scout and offensive scout period. And then at the end of the practice, we'll have another special teams period. Usually we pair kickoff with punt, and then we'll pair kickoff return with punt return. Our return units on the same day, and our coverage units on the same day.
It is How's recruiting changed for you? So there's so much going on, and I'm sure Derek, has some questions on this too. There's so much going on now. We just saw today that it came down that JUCOs don't count. Going forward, if there's an appeal and everything and it gets approved, JUCOs won't count towards their eligibility. Obviously, you got players that are able to play a lot longer. The transfer portal. I'm sure NIL is not as big a deal, at the level you guys are at yet. But
it's coming, I'm sure, though.
I'm sure something's coming. But talk about how that has kind of shaped the recruiting process.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes in recruiting, you have to evaluate the whole player and the family. It's come to a point where now with the NILs and the collectives, there's a lot more selfish recruits out there. Guys that are me guys versus guys that are we guys. So you got to kind of weed through that, figure out why they love the game of football, why do they play it. Is it for the money or is it for the love of the game? Typically we'll weed out the guys that are in it for themselves or in it for the money, because we want guys that love the game of football. And I'm a firm believer that you develop guys through the high school recruiting, and then you kind of plug and play pieces from the transfer portal or the junior college, because I don't think that having a team full of transfers or anything like that is going to be beneficial, because what's going to happen is you're going to have to replace those guys on a regular basis, because those guys are going to leave. Like they're going to transfer to you, play for a year, try to get film, and then they're going to try to go somewhere else. So I recruit high school guys that I could develop, and then probably 30% of the transfer portal and junior college type of guys.
And you guys are at a unique situation, right? Because that D2 level, people look at the D2, D3, right? And they look at that and they think that is has anything to do with the amount of talent that comes in and out, and especially in your league, right, where you're talking some top teams. I know Kutztown had an incredible run this year. You're playing some of the best at the Division II level. Are you seeing a lot more guys transferring down to your level within the program itself?
Yeah, you're getting a lot of FCS guys that are come down. We had a couple. We had a Youngstown State transfer too. Actually, we got some Division I guys that'll come down. The PSAC is really good conference wise.
Hell yeah!
We got the most NFL guys in D2. The competition level every Saturday is theirs. Like the margin for error is very small. So you're gonna get some really talented players. But the way of the world in recruiting now with the transfer portal, you're getting big schools poaching guys from smaller schools to come up, and you got agents reaching out to players telling them they can get them NIL deals and all of those things.
And that was going to be my next question.
It's a crazy time.
Yeah, that was my next. Look, I'm sure for the guys you get coming down, you probably, you get that amount of guys. You have just as many that, hey, this guy had, a hell of a season for us. He's still got 3 years of eligibility. Hey, buddy, I can throw you, here's your NIL plus this. So I'm sure you got to balance and constantly recruit your room every single day.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of part of it now. The NIL is different than the collective. There's only a small portion of guys that are making money through NIL. You got like the Shador Sanders of the world and Travis Hunters and top tier quarterbacks and those type of guys. Those are the guys that are NIL on commercials and doing things like that. A lot of those guys, when they hear the words NIL and they think that they're gonna be making a shit ton of money through NIL, but that's not kind of how it works in college football. Like the collective is the group that invests all this money into the program, and they divvy that money up to the players. So it's not everybody's not making millions of dollars in that realm of the NIL and the collective world.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to understand. At a Division two level, it's interesting because you're kind of in that in between world, and when you're in that in between world, there are guys that think that that's their bridgeway sometimes to go to the next level, and then you have guys that think they should be somewhere else. I think that's really a great philosophy that you have as far as being able to sift through guys. How much do they love football? How much do they want to be a part of the football program? And that's a big deal, man. Like people don't realize. I see so many kids now that all they talk about is what level they want to be at. And it's not like, why do you want to be at that level? Like, why do you do you think that you belong there? What is it that you're doing to put yourself in that position? And how good are you? Like how good are you, whether it's Division two, Division three level, Division one level, because of the transfer portal. All the players that are getting an opportunity to play in college now are really good, even down at the Division three level, because the opportunities are getting pushed down, right? Because you have so many guys at the top level transferring back and forth. Guy comes into high school, he leaves or whatever. So you're getting some high school players that are now coming down to the Division two and Division three level that may not have come down before. So that's an important thing to find out for them, because if they were just coming to you because they think, oh, next year I'm going XYZ school after this, obviously those are guys that you don't want. How do you communicate that to the kids? Because I think that has to be the hardest thing at Division two in recruiting, because I hear it so much. Like kids are like, oh, if I don't play at this level, and then all of a sudden they fall to a certain level, they're like, well, I guess I'll go play. Like, how do you communicate to help you kind of sift through it and figure out which guys are the right guys for you?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, I'm very straightforward when it comes to recruiting. My first question to a guy is, why do you play the game, and what is your end goal in playing the game? Like, if your end goal is to play at Division one, then and you're not getting Division one looks, then you probably not a guy that I want to bring in, because your goal is just to try to use us to get there.
Yeah.
Which I understand that it happens, and I'm okay with that. If there's one guy in the room that could transfer out and go up and play Division one, that's fine. But if you got a whole roster of guys trying to do that, like, it's gonna make it a lot tougher as a coach, because now you have to try to replace guys every year, and we just don't want to be in the business of that. It's too competitive to try to bring in new players every day, because that causes a lot of issues, because you got to filter through what's the guy's intent, how much they love the game, personalities. You don't want to recruit the wrong guys, because those guys could be cancers to the program. And ultimately, as coaches, we get paid to do a job, but we can't do our job if we got guys that are cancers, that are constantly playing the complaint game and the blame game and the comparison game and all these different things behind closed doors that affect the program in a negative way. We want the high character guys that are going to speak life into the program, that are going to, encourage other guys that want to be a part of it, and try to keep all those guys here. But, in recruiting's tough now. I mean, it's tough. It doesn't matter, where you are. Other teams are poaching your players. They're, guys are looking to transfer into different places and things of that nature. So it just makes it a lot tougher, but it's part of the way the world is right now.
I think the thing that I like about what you're doing is you're setting a standard of what you guys expect, and then the players that come to you know what that standard is. Because I see at the Division one level, especially, obviously, and you probably see it all the time too when you read these things, and I'm sure you have a ton of friends that are coaches at Division one level. UConn, where I played at, like, there's a whole thing going on because Jim Mora, who's an excellent coach, great coach, made a statement that, we're going to let our players play in the, bowl game, even if they're in the transfer portal. And even if they've already committed somewhere else in the transfer portal. And there's a lot of controversy in it because everyone feels like he made that statement because he had to make that statement. But to the outside, I feel like that's just a signal to players to jump in the transfer portal because you got nothing to lose, right? So you could be in potentially a bad situation by not setting a standard to the public of what you expect. And I get it's a catch-22. No, there's probably no right answer, you know what I'm saying? So I understand that. But I feel like it's very, very tough for coaches because you don't want to discourage a guy from coming to you. But I think what you said is really the most important thing. You don't want to have to replace your roster every single year.
Yeah.
And, I look at what happened to Florida State, right? Last year, they were basically the best. They were among the best teams in the country.
Like undefeated.
And will they win 1 game this year or 2 games? I don't know. So that's what could happen. Like, and your coaching career is tied to that. And then the players, I just think it's human nature. Like, we're all athletes, and as an athlete, if you're at a place and the standard is a certain way, and then because I've been through a coaching change, in college, and the guy who was my coach first, I loved him, but it was like the Wild West, you know what I mean? And then Skip Holtz came in, set a real standard of what he expected, and guys adhered themselves to that standard. And if you didn't, it wasn't going to be you weren't going to get on the field. You know what I mean? So it didn't matter how talented you were. That wasn't going to happen, and ultimately helped set the program up for the right stage going forward, right? So how difficult is that as coaches? And you talked about it a little bit, and you said, how you're straightforward with them. Do you guys ever feel like you're put under pressure to maintain it, or do you feel just to get guys in, or do you feel like you set your standard and you'll do the best you can with the guys that fit to your standard, because in the long run that's going to give you the best chance for success?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to fall below our standard. And just one thing along the lines of what you kind of alluded to, the transfer portal and the timing of it is at a very weird time.
Right.
And they were talking about this on ESPN last night was, the quarterback from Penn State, the backup, he's getting out right before they play in a playoff. And he can't really get in the portal and then have an opportunity somewhere else if he stays at Penn State during the time where the portal is. So he has to get in the portal and find another place to play. And, he has to transfer in January, which, makes it very tough. I don't think they should have that mid-year transfer point. I think they should wait till after spring ball and give the guys the opportunity. If they want out, then you get out after spring ball, and then you have to find a home, But if you do it in the middle of the season, in the middle of the year, then, I mean, you're going to have a lot of guys falling out. Like the quarterback from SMU, he said he's going in the portal, and he's supposed to be playing in the playoff game against Penn State. So, what does that say to the rest of your teammates at SMU who fought for you all year, and then now you're not playing in the game, and they're trying to win a national championship? It just waters down the whole product.
Great point. That's
a phenomenal point. Phenomenal point.
And that puts these guys in a tough situation, right? So where they have to
you have to make that decision.
But because they don't want to, not have a transfer come to them. You're right. You're right about that. And didn't they had I thought last year they had
it's
two
the calendar.
windows. I thought they had 2 windows in the winter, December and January. But I guess they decided to get rid of the January one and keep the December window, and then obviously the spring ball one as well. They still have
I mean, even the makeup of
it does make no sense, because
even the makeup of the whole timing of now look, now you got a 12-team college playoff, right? And even if these guys weren't playing in a playoff game, they'd be playing in some type of bowl game, or you're preparing for some type of bowl game. Now you have to make that, big boy decision. Hey, am I leaving the team, like you said, Coach, that I fought for, that I've done all this stuff for, that I've worked for, and here's what it all comes down to. Am I going to leave before that because I'm hoping I have an opportunity to play at somewhere else? Now, that comes out, and now it's all this. Now we also we know, right, that even though the guys can't talk to other schools while they're currently on a roster, we know all of that shit's going on behind closed doors. Guys, it's literally free agency where guys are calling guys, or they're having their agents or whatever call people and be, hey, I can get you this from this school. I can get you this from this school. But Dave and I talk about this all the time. In the NFL, right, like you have agents that are like certified, and the numbers they're throwing out are legit numbers. You don't know about that stuff in college football because everything's being done behind closed doors. Some guy could be throwing out a number that now, your program could go and beat, right? But is it a real number? Are they really getting that? Like, you just don't know. There's so many, behind closed doors things going on that, it really needs to be, the calendar needs to be revamped. The entire process of, what's the word I'm looking for? The transparency of it all needs to be revamped where, we're ultimately doing what's best for the players. And Coach, you talked about it. Like, we're living in a me age where these guys are really worried about themselves and their next move and what makes it best for them to get to the level that they want to. Like you said, it just waters down everything.
Yeah, I think they need to put some restrictions in place on one, when a guy transfers, he has to either sit out for a year or whatever the case may be. I think they need to bring that rule back. And at the same time, when it comes to, the money aspect of, who's talking to these players and who's educating them on the actual thing that's going on. Because you'll have some of these coaches' friends that are the guys that are poaching players from other schools. Hey, that quarterback from Ohio State or the receiver Smith from Ohio State, hey, reach out to him and tell him we'll give him $5 million and 3 cars or whatever the case may be. We got a car for mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. Like we'll hook everybody up. Like it's so crazy that they have all these people behind the scenes that are doing this stuff, and they're not educating these players at all. Of the taxes and they got no clue, Coach. That shit, they have no idea. They think that number is actually that number that they're getting. Right? It's like when you get your first real check and you're like, oh, yeah, this is great. And then you look at the number that actually gets deposited. And look, the numbers I'm seeing, Coach, sure as shit ain't the numbers you're seeing, So it's just totally, oh, yeah, I got this. It's like, hey, buddy, now guess what? You got that Escalade, but now you got to pay insurance. You got to pay for gas. You got to pay for all this other kind of shit. They have no idea. The financial literacy aspect of it needs to be really more expressed in the whole thing. But also that leads me to this part too. In recruiting, the head coach, and we're talking about like just for your instance, you can now communicate with the player himself directly. Whereas, when we were being recruited, you talk to a head coach who then talked to the parent, who then talked to the player. Coaches can now go and DM guys and have these conversations where they can literally talk to a 16, 17-year-old kid, and that gray window with the way some of these coaches operate will now go and fully take advantage of that kid who has no idea what's going on in the situation. I mean, we just talked about committable, non-committable, right? We talked about ghost offers that just they throw it out there, and then when a guy goes to commit, it ain't there. I mean, this stuff now with social media and the direct access to players themselves, how do you see that affecting, recruiting, Coach? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point because now you have access to the player almost instantaneously without talking to the parent, but a lot of times the parents aren't educated to understand how recruiting works. So just because you tell a guy that you're offering him, especially at our level, we might offer you. That is just the way that works. Like, one, you got to be accepted. So we can see what the academic numbers are. 2, we got to work through all the other grants and scholarships that you could potentially get. And then after that's all said and done, now we give you a number of what we see your value as a player in our program. That don't mean you're going to get a full ride.
No,
you'll have guys coming and saying, well, Coach, I need to be on full scholarship. Well, we aren't and the place for you, because we just don't have the money and the resources to give everybody a full scholarship. That's not the level we're at. So that's unrealistic. And you got to sometimes, the parents have to be educated on, what's actually going on and how the process works so that they are more informed. At Division I, they could throw you that money and say, hey, we're going to give you a full scholarship, X, Y, and Z, whatever paid for. At this level, we got to go through a process. And then the Division III level, it's an even more strenuous process because you're not dealing with athletic money anymore. You're only dealing with academics. So now if you're not a high academic kid, you're going to be taking out loans and everything just to go play football at school. So it's all different. But the financial literacy and educational piece of it needs to be. You're going to start seeing like the quarterback from the Colts who played at Stanford is now the GM at.
Oh, Luck, yeah.
Andrew Luck.
You're going to start seeing that a lot more of former players becoming GMs at colleges, so that they can do that financial literacy and educate parents on the process and the money aspect and all that stuff. Like they gotta get it has to happen.
It absolutely does. It's so interesting on how the process not only has changed so much, but like what goes into educating, when to commit. What do you do? And I'm curious about this because a lot of parents do not understand this. Gannon extends an offer. You extend an offer, to a kid. And some people still think it's like the old days where they can go and sit and try to collect several offers, 5 or 6 of them, maybe in your conference, right? And they don't understand there's a timeline on things because there's so many parts between transfer portal, high school prospects, this guy leaving the team, this guy coming onto the team. What is your best advice to them when they get like an offer to your school, or maybe they have a couple of offers, and how quickly should they try to frame a decision pattern there?
I would say for us, our timeline, we might offer 100 kids. I might have 10 DBs on the board, and I rank those guys from top to bottom. But once we extend an offer to a guy, he has to start his process of application, getting accepted, all of those things, because when at the beginning of it, we have a lot of money to play with. But once we start getting commits, that money starts getting taken away, and those positions start getting taken away. So if I'm bringing in 3 DBs and I offer 10, right, and the third guy commits, right, he's going to get a good portion of the pie. And then, say the 5th guy says, you know what, I visited, I liked it, I enjoyed my experience, I'm going to commit. And then we get the 3rd and the 5th guy, and then we're waiting for one more, and that it could be the 10th guy, could be the 1st guy, but at the end of the day, once we get those guys committed, if you're the top guy and you're like waiting for offers, and then you come back and say, Coach, I want to come to Gannon, and we already got those positions filled, even though you were the top on our board is no longer available. So we have to have those tough conversations and say, hey, this is the process, and this is how it works. So we do a good job of educating those guys on the process and the steps to get in a position to actually commit. You want to make sure you take the visit, get on campus, see the culture and environment, meet the coaching staff, and those type of things, because to us, that shows that you're interested. A kid that's just committing blind, we probably don't want, because he don't know anything about the program. He's not taking doing his due diligence to see what's going on there. So you just got to kind of work through that, and it's all a process. But the timeline is definitely there, and we tell those guys up front, like, we're gonna take this X number of guys, and when those guys start committing, those offers start coming off the board.
Right. And I think that's phenomenal on your part, because, we talk to guys all the time and hear the horror stories about that kind of stuff. So, we always tell guys, look, if you're getting something, like, you need to commit now, right? Because like you said, that stuff's going away. And with the amount of guys that would be willing to do everything under the sun to take that spot that you have offered right now. Like, if you don't, it's gonna be gone. Like, this is not like a waiting game and play your cards so that you can get this or use it as leverage or whatever. If you have it, take it, because it might not be there tomorrow.
Yeah, you have there's a lot of players out there that's chasing offers, and some of them, like our top guy on the board, he might get offered from FCS school, so he might say, "Hey, coach, once that happens, if he gets a FBS Power 4 offer or something like that, then we just replace that guy with another guy because he's probably not going to come to us." But it's always a revolving door in regards to the board. But at the end of the day, either guys commit or they go elsewhere and we put somebody else there. And then it just keeps kind of working itself out. And eventually, wherever you are on that board, if you got an offer and you feel good about that offer in that school, you probably want to take that offer, because some of those guys or offers are going to get taken away because they're looking at other guys as well.
Absolutely.
Coach, that is phenomenal. I really can't tell you how much I enjoyed, hearing your story and hearing how you approach everything. It's no coincidence that you're really doing so well. And your things are only going to continue to get better at the pace you're at. I can't thank you enough for coming on. I mean, that last part from with recruiting, players need to hear that stuff, because it's amazing how, as much information as there is out there, it's like they still, I'm sure you're amazed by it, like you could go and read all these things and people still don't know. Right. So, but the fact that your approach to everything is so sound and you have a great process. Yeah. Great process. And really enjoyed hearing it. And I think it's really important for more kids to hear how you talk about things. So I can't thank you enough for coming on today.
Absolutely. Anytime, fellas.
Appreciate you, Coach.
Coach, have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.
Coach, Merry Christmas. We're a Merry Christmas podcast here. So
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, buddy.
Christmas.
Take care,
Happy
bud.
Holidays, you guys.
All right.
Yes,
that was great. That was excellent.
Really good.
Really good. Really, really sound guy. So you knew him from is that when you were at Defiance for a little bit, or when
he got my job when I left?
Okay. There you go. Good. That's cool.
No, but
That's
great. Obviously stayed in touch, obviously, and then Coach Matt Sakis kind of, hired him. I mean, it was really kind of his first official, coaching job. And Defiance is a hard place, Division III program. It's more Indiana than it is Ohio. It's almost, it's like, 45 minutes east of Toledo. So you're literally pretty much on the Indiana border, but and it's a smaller school, but and for him to go in there and kind of do what he did to make that move and do all of those things, just a really excellent background guy with a lot of moves with him as a player, going from that high level Division I Iowa to playing in the league for a little and having some time there and then getting to the CFL. Those are the guys that I love to bring on because they have so much background in so many different areas. And his journey is just so different that they have so much knowledge that others really kind of don't. And then ultimately to get a Division II coach on, that level of scholarship football that's available, but because there's a 2 next to it, people don't want to, they kind of shun it and whatnot. And I mean, you look at that PSAC conference, Dave, I mean, shit, dude, there's good teams all over the place talking about, they got the most NFL guys. Absolutely. I mean, it's high level football, with scholarships attached to it. So to just hear his process, especially nowadays with everything going on, how things are, trickling down and whatnot. And even the other way where, he's got to recruit his best kid because there are going to be Power 5 teams that look at the PSAC and say, who's the best guys? Can they fill a role for us and play? So to have that kind of go back and forth, I just think phenomenal educational kind of help people know kind of how it is. And look, you want guys that are straight shooters like they are, right? Like, here's the process. Here's what it is. Here's our board. Here's how we evaluate. Here's what we're looking for. Yes, no, make a decision because, this thing keeps rolling. I think a lot of people really don't understand that. They think these schools are just going to sit there and wait for them to go through their process. Well, we're a team in a school that has to work through that too, dude. So even though you're number 2 on our board, like if 7 and 8 want to come, let's go. I'll roll with those guys because, you know, they're there to make a decision, or they have done their due diligence, and look, their application's in. They've already visited. They like this place. They want it. Boom, there it is. And like you said, that's a little different too with that pool of money. Whereas, hey, if you commit now, you're going to get this much. But if you don't and wait, well, 1, it might not be there, or 2, even if you do, it ain't going to be what it was originally. So, I mean, yeah, does it put pressure on the recruit to make a decision like sooner than later? And obviously you want to do your due diligence on that side, but, you know, get moving with it. Like, don't take so long because these things are going to go away. You know, we talk about that all the time.
No doubt about it. Fantastic podcast. It was great talking to him.
He's awesome. You could definitely see him, like, he'll rise the ranks if he wants.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
Phenomenal.
All right. Well, till next time. We're rolling.